Hello? Awesome. I think it's close enough to like 1:59 in a bunch of seconds that we can get started. Hello and welcome. This is the SIG-UI, aka the Kubernetes Dashboard Deep Dive. My name is Jeffrey Sica, and I'm one of the co-chairs.
Yeah. So me and Martin are basically the core developers of the Kubernetes Dashboard and maintainers. We are working on it since the beginning. And yeah, we are also co-leaders of the SIG-UI. So
yeah, so not much to add. I'm Marcin, working on the project from the very beginning. At the moment, one of the project leaders, and community leaders.
All right, so what we're going to go through, this is a deep dive, but every presentation needs a quick little intro. We're also going to go through a code walkthrough. There are many folders in the Kubernetes Dashboard project, but we're going to go over some of the more important ones. There's a quick slide on best practices if you're doing Kubernetes Dashboard development. We want to talk about our plans for the next year and beyond, and then also see if anyone else is willing to or interested in contributing, and then take everyone's questions. So hopefully you're here and you know the Kubernetes Dashboard, but if not, it is meant to be just a generic web UI for you to interact with your Kubernetes cluster. It'll let you see different resources, interact with different resources, and kind of be a more visual-friendly kubectl. In the last year and a half or so, we have completely rewritten the front end to go from Angular version 1 to technically Angular version 7. We have built in metric server support now that Heapster is fully deprecated and removed. The metric server support still hasn't been merged, but it's going to get merged in essentially once we're back from KubeCon. And we have applied and gotten 2 students for the Google Summer of Code, and we'll touch on what they're going to work on later on.
yeah, so I will explain some basic folder structure that we are using in the project for all that would want to start to contribute. So first, we have this IO. We basically taken that from the Angular team, so it contains all the build artifacts, scripts, and configurations that we are using to build, start, and deploy also the project. So deploy contains our recommended and alternative setup for the dashboard. Recommended one is the one that we are recommending because of the security reasons. The core team basically enforced on us to introduce that because by default, if you're using this setup, it will be secure. It will not allow privileges to be escalated and stuff like that. Also, it allows you to log in. And the alternative setup is for more advanced users. So if you want to use some proxy, out proxy, or some kind of SSO that you have inside your system, then yeah, this is the option for you. You basically just pass some header, authentication header, and it will dashboard will just do the job for you. Then we have the Gulp directory. This is like legacy directory because on the first version of dashboard we are using Gulp pretty heavily, and we didn't migrate yet all the stuff that was in the Gulp. An example, building our backend, but we will try to do that. We'll do that eventually. And the scripts are the new way how we handle our building, linting, formatting, and basically all that stuff in the project. And all the stuff that we moved from Gulp is in the scripts folder. It's mostly bash that is run using npm. And yeah, node modules. It is npm directory that we use as a vendor in directory. So if you are npm CI, which is like recommended command to run right now, it will generate it for you and download all dependencies in there.
Yeah, so the next folder is SRC. It contains all the sources of the application. We have basically decided to split it to two major folders. One of them is backend, and backend contains all the sources for backend part of the application, because dashboard has two layers, and one of them is backend, which interacts directly with Kubernetes API server. We use it to fetch all the data, to perform all the operations on it, like sorting, pagination, and stuff like that. And then we send it to our frontend, which is located in frontend directory. Frontend is written in an Angular 7 at the moment, so we try to stick to the newest version of Angular. We are using Angular material. All the source files are there at the moment. There is a vendor folder located in root directory. It contains all the dependencies for backend files. We are using dep at the moment, but we are planning to change it to use Go mods like Kubernetes does. And the next files are Go package definition, which contains definitions for every dependencies that we are using in the backend, and also package JSON, where we are defining the dependencies that we are using in frontend, and also scripts that we are using. So basically npm start, npm test, check, and stuff like that. Yeah, so we would like to share some of the best practices that should be used if you want to contribute to our project. First of them is always clear node modules and run npm CI before checking out PRs. If it's the best, because sometimes you can run into issues with stale dependencies, or someone introduced new dependency, and yeah, it should be done every time.
Yeah, then we have our test scripts that should be run after every change. So when you finish your feature, just run npm test and npm run check to check all static things, like if the code is formatted, if it follows all the rules that we have introduced by linters, and also if it passes all the tests that we have added. Then for the local development, you can use Minikube or Kind. That is like the fastest way to start the cluster, I think, right now. Kind is just like one binary, and Minikube starts a VM, so this is up to you what we want to choose. And we will also show the demo with Kind, how to start the local version of dashboard and run it.
Are we good? Oh, sweet. Last but not least, smaller PRs are better PRs. There are honestly fewer dashboard maintainers than we would like, so our time is kind of precious, and we only get to work on this a little bit out of the day. So if you can submit smaller PRs, we can review them faster and give you feedback faster. So for a demo, I was going to use Kind, which is Kubernetes and Docker, to spin up a cluster locally, and then I was going to just spin up a version of the dashboard off of master. So literally, if you git cloned the current dashboard code, that's what we would be running. One thing I won't do because of conference Wi-Fi is I am not going to clear my node modules and run npm CI, because we will be here for the entire time. So just a little bit of background about Kind. Kind is the utility that all of SIG testing is using to do Kubernetes testing in the background. If you're doing a PR against Kubernetes, it's going to spin up Kind clusters and run tests in the background. The reason for that is it is very, very lightweight. The Kind binary itself is like 10 megabytes, And the only other thing that it needs is the image. In this case, I think I'm running an older version of kind, so it's pulling down 113.4, but there is already a 114.2 version. So you can actually, with different configs, spin up multiple kind clusters and run end-to-end tests against multiple versions of Kubernetes. And that's one of the things that we're looking into in the future. So we have already just spun up our cluster. Let's get the kubeconfig path. And then let's copy it. That is super small. So when you clone down the dashboard, there is a folder called npmrc. It specifies a bunch of different defaults for configs locally. One of them is where your kubeconfig is. So we want to override that with where kind has put its kubeconfig. And since we are already in the dashboard folder, we can actually do npm start now that it knows where the kind config is. And this is starting up simultaneously the front end and the back end. I forget where it is. Somewhere in here it actually shows that, hey, it is using, is it further down? Thank you. So yeah, using kubeconfig file, kubeconfig kind. So what this is doing, it forks and spins up a backend Golang server or Golang process and the JavaScript front end. And when the JavaScript front end spins up, it actually needs to bundle everything before it starts. So technically, we could go to localhost 8080, and then it would just show you a white screen, and you would see a lovely message here that says, hey, this hasn't been bundled yet. Now that it has actually bundled, we can go, and here is the current master version of the dashboard running against a kind cluster. Magic. This is how I personally do my development locally all the time. I was going from Minikube to kind, but kind is a lot faster for me. And even though this is a Mac laptop running Docker in a VM, I have a desktop running Linux, and it goes much faster. But that was still a lot faster for me than Minikube. So didn't realize this was going to turn into a kind and a dashboard demo, but it did.
Okay, maybe you can also go through some of the changes that we introduced in the second version of dashboard.
Yep.
So one thing would be,
Tell me
like
first,
you can see here, the details page is it's completely different. We reinvented that, made it more clear, more readable for people, split some information. Also, we can.
Here, do you want to drive?
Sure. Also, we can like change that and collapse all the information that we do not need to see. This is just a small change, but maybe this will help someone. Other than that, on the pods, oh, we don't have pods.
Names, yeah, go to Cube System.
We can see it. Okay, so let's check pods. And okay,
I have it reversed,
we have changed
sorry.
we have changed the way we show containers. So before, when you've had multiple arguments for the container that was running, it was not really readable. Now it's much better, and the containers list will be shown in a separate tabs, let's say. Yeah, besides that, Marcin can tell more.
Yeah, and one of the most important changes was basically changing the way how we are loading the resources on grouped views. So, for example, when you are entering workload page, we are no longer sending one big request for everything inside cluster. At the moment, each one of the components is sending its own request. That's why the page is loading much faster. So performance should be a lot better at the moment. We have also added a few of the nice things like dark mode. Yeah, can be used Besides that, we have changed many of the details view, like config map view. You can see all the data. It should be formatted, but this config map is not a good config map to show that. Yeah, this one has no data at all. We have changed secrets view. It will be basic. You can basically check the tokens and stuff like that. At the moment, I think application should be a bit easier to use for new people. And yeah, we are finishing it at the moment. Should be done really soon. The release should happen in 1 month. We don't know if it will be alpha or beta release at the moment, but it will happen.
So on our roadmap, we have still many things, and one of them is OAuth support, better. Right now, we rely basically only on service accounts that are already, that you can create in Kubernetes. But yeah, we want to add that. We make it more seamless experience for new users, and without too much configuration. We would like to do it without too much configuration, so that beginners can also benefit from that. That's why we also did not do that before, and we were waiting for the API server also to introduce some changes. Then we have CRD support, but maybe Marcin can tell that.
Yes, so Dashboard previously had support for third-party resources, but as soon as Kubernetes deprecated them, we have removed that from the dashboard, and it was never added for custom resource definitions. But at the moment, we have 2 students working on Google Summer of Code program, and one of them will be working on custom resource definition support for Dashboard. Yeah, so we are looking forward to that. We'll be also converting current system of dependencies for backend from deb to Go mode. So we want to follow Kubernetes core team here, and we'll be introducing plugin system. And plugin system is really a feature that it's really wanted from the people because they want to customize dashboard in their deployments, and we plan to do it generic, and this will be the feature that will be also worked, that also one of the students from GSOC will be working on it, and yeah, we'll provide support for them. And we also will begin pruning the backend code. At the moment, we are using client Go, but we are not using all the features that it provides. Last year, we were mainly focused on front-end part of the application. We are rewriting to newer Angular. The backend can be improved at the moment a lot, so we'll be focusing on that. As soon as the migration will be finished, we'll create new release, and then we'll work on that.
Yeah, so this was already mentioned, that we have students working on the GSOC project, so I think we could skip that. And for all of you, how you can contribute, we have labels. That is the most important thing for the contributors, for as good first issues that you can start to work on. They are simpler, so anybody should be able to just take a look and try this. Then you can also propose new features. We have many good proposals that we will take eventually look at, but this is just not that many people we have to work on that. And you can also review PRs, because this also takes so much of our time that we can't do everything. So if you are willing to just review something or ask if you have any questions for us, you can always ping us, and any help will be appreciated.
So basically, if you know Go, JavaScript, or whatever that we can use, you can contribute. You don't need to know whole project. You can just help us with improving the backend, improving frontend, changing something small, changing wikis, because you know how to set something up, and all the help will be valuable for us.
So if you have any other questions, we three are in Slack all the time in the Kubernetes Slack channel SIG-UI. There is also a mailing list, and the link to the dashboard repo was on the previous slide, but it's also here as well. If you have any questions that you don't feel like asking right now, feel free to email them or send them in Slack. But at this point, we are happy to take questions or show random stuff, because I think we have like 10 minutes left. Questions, actually? Any questions? We'll answer off of this mic. Yeah.
Hi. Can you mention in what direction you want to go with the plugin integration and how you want to tackle that?
Okay, so at the moment, the proposal from the student is accepted, but the whole architecture is not formed yet. So we'll begin to work on that, I think, in a month or two, because the program takes place during the summer. We want to make it as generic as we can, because you can change front-end part, you can change back-end part, so it can be very complex and tricky, and what we would like to focus at the moment is prepare really good architecture for that, have a good idea, perhaps not finish all the implementation, but it needs to be specified and done really good to allow other people using it. So it must work not only with one application, not plugin for one application, but for multiple plugins, ideas, so yeah.
I think I can add something. So we were thinking from technical side, we are thinking about dynamic compilation of also front-end and partly exposing some back-end mechanism that could dynamically expose some endpoints also. But well, there are many like tricky things like security in here and privileges for the plugins. So probably also we will introduce some YAML or something configuration that user will have to provide to configure all this security stuff, and maybe on which views you would like to see the plugin, how it will work. So yeah, there are many things. There is initial proposal on some repo. Do you remember?
I think the cap is being created at the moment, and yeah, we'll review it, because until we couldn't accept and say which proposal was accepted from the student, we couldn't review it. But at the moment, we know who will be working on it, and now we can start to work. So proposals were accepted like 1 or 2 weeks ago, and we'll be working on that. And also from the technical side, there is user can create his own API, but then it's also needs to work somehow, because it needs to authenticate. So I think authentication will be one of the most critical points of the future.
From a usability side, you know, we've worked a lot on getting metric server support going. Ideally, that goes away once the plugin system is built, and we can just tie Dashboard directly to Prometheus rather than having a shim of a container that scrapes the metric server. And then other plugins like cloud provider specific plugins could potentially be built so you can get statistics off of like your AWS load balancer, you know, things like that. That I think is a lot of the plugins that are going to be built once the plugin system is actually there. Any other questions? All right, then I give you back 10 minutes of your conference time to hopefully try and find more soda. Thank you all.